Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Game Changer. I am Maryam Zia. In today's program, we will be talking about a multifaceted relationship between Pakistan and New Zealand. Both countries have developed their diplomatic ties, and it's been over 70 years that both countries are collaborating in different fields when we talk about bilateral ties as well as multilateral engagement on different international issues between both the countries. In today's program, we will be talking about the potential of economic relations between Pakistan and New Zealand, and in addition to this, we will also be discussing other areas of collaboration between both the countries when we talk about agriculture as well as sports diplomacy, people-to-people contacts, education. There are a lot of sectors in which both countries are collaborating, and there is a lot of potential. So we will be talking about this in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Dr. Shamsi, who is expert in international affairs. Welcome to the program. We are also joined by Mr. Hamzah Rifaat, who is expert in international affairs. Welcome to the program. And we are also joined online by Dr. Hasnain, Javed, who is economist and expert in international affairs. Welcome to the program. So, Dr. Shamsi, let me start with you with a very basic question. When we talk about Pakistan's relations with New Zealand, of course, both countries are far apart and there are oceans between both the countries. But can you tell us about the historical, historical overview of the relationship between both the countries, how the relationship has evolved over the past 7 decades, and especially when we talk about the diplomatic ties between Pakistan and New Zealand?
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Thank you very much, Maryam. First, we need to understand what New Zealand is. Number one, it's a beautiful country. No matter how far it is worth a visit once in life at least. And I have been very fortunate to have visited Wellington especially. It is composed of over 700 islands. Basically 2 major islands, that is northern and southern. It's a very, very advanced country which is very highly ranked in HDI, that is Human Development Index. In all fields, whether it is education, health, infrastructure or human rights, anywhere. If you see the list, you will find New Zealand in first 4, 5, 6 countries. It has a GDP of over $250 billion with a per capita income of something like over 50,000 US dollars. Pakistan's relations with New Zealand have always been very warm because of mutual cooperation and multi-faceted, especially because they are partners on a lot of multilateral forums like Commonwealth and UN, etc., UN peacekeeping, etc. New Zealand has been a great help to Pakistan during floods and earthquakes. New Zealand has a lot of expertise in minesweeping, and Pakistan has learned a lot in that regard. New Zealand has a special place for Pakistan because of cricketing ties, and also because New Zealand is a huge dairy producer.
Of course.
And Pakistan also.
Of course, you have highlighted all the key points that we will be discussing in detail in today's program. But when we talk about Pakistan's relations with New Zealand, can you tell us about some high-level visits that have taken place in the recent times and how they have impacted the political relations between both the countries, and what does it mean for enhancing the bilateral relations between both the countries?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we look at the distance. Last time we were discussing Brazil, once again it was discussed in detail that in the globalized world the distances don't matter anymore. It is across Tasman River that from Australia that New Zealand is located, and since it's very advanced and has the capacity and intellectual properties on many items and things that Pakistan can learn, The political engagement has been very low as far as Pakistan and New Zealand is concerned, and should have been much more because of New Zealand's expertise in many fields that Pakistan needs. I mentioned dairy and I mentioned defense. Moreover, New Zealand, in spite of its small size, is highly educated, intelligentsia is very advanced, and they are major contributors in contributing for the military strategy. I can just give you an example of Sean Clark, who has given us the strategy for small nations. So what I am trying to say is that New Zealand is one country which must be kept engaged politically, socially and culturally, because in spite of its small size, it has made a lot of contribution in global affairs.
Of course.
So I would like to see far more engagement of Pakistan. As much as we have with Australia, we should not ignore New Zealand because it is farther than Australia or it is smaller than Australia.
Of course.
That is what my point of view is.
Of course. So when we, Mr. Hamzah, when we talk about international issues, can you tell us what are some of the important international issues in which Pakistan and New Zealand have collaborated in the past, and what are the areas in which there is more potential?
Well, first of all, I think New Zealand's leadership at the global stage is very admirable. One of the reasons why is because it's a country which believes in peacekeeping, it believes in resolution of conflicts, it believes in humanitarian assistance. And I think Pakistan and New Zealand, this is a very underrated aspect of the relationship. They actually do see eye to eye on the Palestinian issue as well. I mean, New Zealand's former Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, she was very clear with regard to, self-determination for the Palestinians. It doesn't mean that, it's hijacked its relationship with Israel, but it does view Palestine as a humanitarian problem.
And she stood for Islamophobia as well.
Yes, she did stand to Islamophobia. That was my next point, that, when the horrific Christchurch mosque attacks took place by a white supremacist named Brendan Tarrant, he was actually from Australia.
Yes.
And New Zealand disowned the entire, could say the entire episode. And Australian senators were actually championing, some of them were controversially championing the cause of that white terrorist, but New Zealanders did not. So New Zealand actually believes in peace, humanity, constructive engagement, humanitarianism, and resolution of conflicts as well. If you take a look at New Zealand's, you could say, role in international affairs, it's always been to try and make sure that they can come up with a more humane perspective. They don't believe in, expanding arms sales. They don't believe in, hosting a very large military. Even when, New Zealand has exported its military prowess abroad in Afghanistan and Iraq, their presence has been relatively smaller as compared to the Australian troops, and has been less controversial as compared to the Australian troops as well. So I think Pakistan and New Zealand can collaborate in, in an array of different areas. First of all, when the Kashmir earthquake took place in 2005, New Zealand was one of the few countries that actually did provide prompt aid to Pakistan. Sir actually mentioned the flood situation. New Zealand is, again, because of the humanitarian disaster that actually beset Pakistan, New Zealand did provide a lot of aid and assistance. So I think it's a country which Pakistan should engage formally more in the international arena as well as domestically. I would love to see, the current Prime Minister actually pay a visit to Islamabad, or maybe our Prime Minister actually going over there to try and make sure that they can explore ties, because it's a country which has an incredible international profile. Unlike America, it is not hegemonic. Unlike China, it doesn't believe in bullying, the neighbors around the South China Sea. It believes in a very humane approach, and that's something that Pakistan can capitalize on.
Of course, Pakistan can capitalize on. But Dr. Hasnain, when we talk about Pakistan's relations with New Zealand, of course, we have maintained diplomatic relations and have collaborated in several fields for several years. But can you tell us about the economic relations between both the countries, and what are the volume of the current trade volume between both the countries?
So, Maryam, I would like to first, appreciate you to taking up all these topics. Like, for example, in the last program, you have taken the Brazil, now the New Zealand. These are those areas which I call it the tapping the untapped, exploring the unexplored, export whatever we have in surplus and import as the last resort. So this program is coming on to the same essence. So I would really appreciate you on to discovering the new area. Well, coming on to the point, I mean, as far as New Zealand is concerned, nobody is touching this area. So as Pakistan and New Zealand signed a trade agreement in 1990s, so as a part of agreement, both sides will have to hold the meeting of the JTC, which had been delayed for almost 22 years. So that's mean till 2021, we haven't done anything so far, as same as the Brazil. We avoid or somehow avoid in a way that there is a cordial relationship, but the economy is very much important, which can create the relationship, which is actually a relationship to me. If there is a cultural exchange, it is just the, I mean, waving the hands. It is just not about the relationship. So relationship is about the economics, and economics and only economics. So after the 22 years gap, the inaugural session of the Pakistan New Zealand joined the Trade Committee (GTC) was held in the Wellington, New Zealand, in March 2012 to review the entire gamut of the bilateral trade and the ways to mean to further enhance the economic cooperation. So as far as the economy is concerned, we have a very small number so far. So if I talk about the top 5 exports, the product in March in 2022, because till 2021 there was no trade, but now they have little trade to export. The total goods and service word is the dairy, the Dr. Shamsi pointed out so well, and the total export is 3.81 billion, and the most of the edible oil and transportation and wood. So that is very much low in the millions, which is not at all good. But as for the import side, as I'm telling you about the export mantra, which the grain changer have, is the export whatever we have in surplus and import as the last resort. So to me, import should be the last resort, but we have our imports are much broader. So we are importing the mineral fuels and oil, mechanical machinery, vehicles, transport, electrical machineries. But we have to learn from the New Zealand that they have what they are focusing on. They themselves is focusing on their own organic ideas, organic machines, and other things. So two-way trade bilateral between Pakistan and New Zealand in the financial year 2021 stood approximately 112 million. And the Pakistan export to New Zealand during the period, while the import from New Zealand stood at the 46 million, which is very low. So to increase that, the main product that New Zealand export to Pakistan are the scrap iron, aircraft part, which is the aircraft part is 8.42 million, and the semi-chemical wood plump is about 7.13. So during the last 26 years, the export of the New Zealand to Pakistan have increased to the annual rate of 6.86, which is very low. And in 2021, New Zealand did not export any service to Pakistan, which is very alarming, and we must have to think on it. Now, if I talk about the export area, so the main product that Pakistan export to New Zealand is house linen, knit sweaters, rice. So every time I talk about that, the main areas are the agriculture and textile. We, I mean, leave everything for about a year. Must focus on all these two areas, textile and agriculture most. And I'm telling you that if I talk about the salt, do you know that in the whole world there are only two destinations which has the best salt all over the world? And the number one quality, which is no parallel to it, is the salt. So the second is I'm currently in China, and my taste buds are quite, they are nowhere, by the way. And I'm so bored by the food because I have tried the real taste. So we have the pulses, we have the agriculture, we have the best meat in the whole world, and the dairy area. So overall, the trade balance must have to flourish in a better way. But as far as the New Zealand aid, they have quite double in the aid. They are giving the HEC program. They have given the most.
Right. We will be talking about education as well. But let me take the discussion to the studios. Of course, Dr. Shamsi, there are a number of sectors, specifically agriculture, that Dr. Sen highlighted, in which Pakistan and New Zealand are collaborating, and of course there is potential. But we know that Pakistan as well as New Zealand are trying to diversify their portfolios as well. So what are some of the non-traditional sectors in which both countries can collaborate, and maybe we are not focusing on those sectors at the moment?
I'll come to that. but it is necessary to tell the audience that we understand New Zealand as a country. New Zealand as a country has its values, and it values its democracy, human rights, and accountability.
Of course.
If you want to do business with New Zealand, you'll have to be very, very fair with them, and that is one impediment that we'll have to face. They value their democracy, and as I said, accountability. Every week the ministers are answerable to anchor person like you, and they really tore them apart as far as their policy and actions are concerned. So it's very hard over there, number one. Number two, they do not practice a single religion. Nearly half of the country has no religion, and only 37% people are Christians, and some 16% are Maoris, their original people. And New Zealand is one country out of so many colonies which has a lot of respect for its original population. Haka is their traditional and original cultural symbol, which the entire nation has adopted. And when you land in New Zealand, the first thing you come across is Haka. They welcome you with Haka. So what I am trying to say is that if you want to do business with them, you'll have to be very fair, straight, honest, and forthcoming to attract investment from them,
Of course.
or to export your item. Your quality of your goods will have to be A+, otherwise it will not be accepted over there, because they do not accept any lower standard products. Even China has to export them their A++ product, otherwise it gets rejected. So need to understand New Zealand itself before you do business with them.
Of course, that is very important, and
Absolutely.
there may be certain challenges when we talk about increasing the economic ties between both the countries, but there are some traditional sectors which we discussed earlier. But what are some of the sectors in which Pakistan and New Zealand should be looking towards for exploring new avenues?
I think the traditional sectors like
Agriculture,
textile,
livestock, leather, yes.
leather, but we need to have value addition, because New Zealand is a rich country, and it has, the people have the capacity to buy expensive things, provided we are able to add value to our cotton and agriculture, dairy and meat, etc. There is a lot of appetite for halal food over there. New Zealand itself is a huge meat exporter and a very good quality meat exporter. So therefore, if you want to do business with them, you have to add values in your products, and rest assured you will find a very good market over there, because people are very fond of using leather goods, the pure cotton goods, and the dairy products, which they are producing themselves, but they do welcome things from abroad, and they import a lot of things from outside world. They have the capacity, their economic capacity is fairly good, and their appetite is also fairly good.
Right, of course.
The tourism sector is very active. It's a, as I said, it's a beautiful country.
Right.
Moreover, the New Zealanders themselves, they want to get out. They like nature,
of course,
and the Pakistan can offer them very attractive venues.
And
where they can
there's a
come
lot
to
of potential for tourism as well. We will be talking about that. But when we talk about economic ties, Mr. Hamzah, of course, they go hand in hand with investments. So are there some avenues or opportunities Pakistan can provide for attracting foreign direct investment from New Zealand?
Well, I think just to take a lead from Dr. Shamsi's point, I think it's very, very important to have a conducive environment for foreign investment. New Zealanders believe in transparency. wherever they're going to invest, they want to make sure that your corruption record is stellar in terms of, your anti-corruption record is stellar. You need to have increased transparency and accountability of all sectors of the economy. And the economy has to be thriving. Because when they speak about New Zealand has had periods of recession as well. I mean, in the early 1990s, they were actually going through a very rough patch. And many New Zealanders were actually leaving the country, as we call, we term it brain drain from their particular state. So at the very same time, New Zealand managed to bounce back from that because they have a very strong agricultural, industrial, and tourism sectors which have been thriving for quite some time.
Of course, and of course, recently announced SIFC may be providing Pakistan that avenue that we can attract FDI as well. So let's move towards sustainable development, and of course we are victim of climate change as well. So are there some avenues, because like Dr. Shamsi mentioned that they are fond of nature. So are there some avenues and development assistance plans in which Pakistan and New Zealand can collaborate for more greener environment?
Absolutely. I think, when we talk about Pakistan, as you rightly mentioned, suffers from climate change. I think New Zealand has a very stellar record with regard to preserving their environment.
True.
In fact, in many different international organizations, they've been championing the cause of zero emissions and, you could say climate zero, and to try and make sure that they can...
What lessons Pakistan can learn from?
Well, first of all, it's very, very important to ensure, because New Zealand is a very interesting case where the environment has been preserved as well as the economy. So in order for them to do that, I think the best way to actually understand New Zealand is to get a hold of their best practices. What have they done to try and make sure that their environment is sustainable? I think New Zealand also has the benefit of geography because of the very fact that it lies south to Australia across the Tasman Sea. So one of the reasons why they always have a temperate oceanic climate, which results in vegetation actually taking place. If you take a look at the northern areas of Pakistan, we have similar climate. But the main difference over there is that Pakistan lacks development in the economic sector while New Zealand does have it. In terms of climate change, I think, when we talk about net zero emissions, we talk about how to make cooperations within Pakistan more environmentally friendly and more attuned towards green economies. That is something that we should look forward to, because New Zealand's collaboration with Pakistan will be subject to human rights record as well.
Of course.
Within the country. If we have a very good human rights record, which we don't, unfortunately, at this point in time, that is something that's going to prompt New Zealanders to invest a bit more. Because as long as, trading ties and developmental assistance has been taking place, New Zealand has also voiced concerns about Pakistan's human rights record. So that is an area that we need to rectify in order for investment and trading ties to move forward.
Of course. And of course, when we talk about international relations, a lot of new collaborations are also happening, Dr. Hasnain. And when we talk about new geographic relations, New Zealand president recently met with a Chinese prime minister as well. So how do you think that is going to impact the geopolitics of the region and also Pakistan's bilateral ties with New Zealand?
Very important question you raised up. So in that way, as I told you, that there is a paradigm shift, or maybe from unipolar to multipolar, but there is a rich geographical changes. So the important event in the recent time is Chris Hipkins successfully met the President Xi Jinping. The China continued to praise New Zealand as the leader in its relation with the developed countries. A constant contrasting example of other in West, so warm and conducive. So that how New Zealand Prime Minister Chris Hipkins described this meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Hipkins visit was the great significance, she pointed. And then this visit was followed after the President Joe Biden called President Xi as a dictator. So this is very much important thing when the President Joe Biden called the President Xi as a dictator, and then Hipkins refused to sign up the US President Joe Biden's description of Xi as a dictator, and has been well received by Beijing. And this signifies a great deal of strength in diplomacy with the China and Pakistan should look forward to develop the relationship with the New Zealand. So New Zealand took the part, and they have negotiate on the basis if they take the word back for what Joe Biden has says about it. Now there is a new change also in the Prime Minister Chris Hipkins of the New Zealand will attend the NATO meeting in the Lithuania not long after his visit to China. So
Right.
IP4 is a reference to the four NATO-friendly countries in Indo-Pacific: IP and Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea. For the second year in the row, the leader of all four countries have been invited to attend the annual gathering of the West premier political and military alliance. So the very important thing is the major issue to discuss is the major overhaul of the NATO war plan. NATO military commanders and U.S. General Christopher Cowell has reportedly drafted 4,000-page strategy of NATO operation throughout the Europe,
Right,
and this will
right.
be very important visit to Hapkin, especially for the Chinese visit.
Of course, and that is very important. Dr. Shamsi, when we talk about regional peace and security, Pakistan as well as New Zealand are committed to regional peace and security. So can you tell us about defense cooperation, defense and security cooperation between both the countries, and what are some of the potential areas when we talk about counter-terrorism in which both countries maybe collaborate, and sharing of knowledge or sharing of technologies between both the countries?
Yeah, this is very significant. Why? Because New Zealand is an anti-war,
True.
anti-terror, and anti-extremism country. It does not support any of these in any form. And as Dr. Hasnain pointed out, that the value system forced the Prime Minister not to endorse President Biden's call against President Xi Jinping. This is very important. So therefore, we have a lot of potential, because our officers, they get trained together in different countries, and we understand their military system, which is very strong, very advanced, although very small armed forces,
Right.
but everywhere they make sure that they are present, whether 4 to 5 people only in Afghanistan, but the New Zealand flag was flying to show the world that they are against terrorism, they are against extremism, and they are supporting, and they never send their operational troops abroad.
Right.
They always say they're supporting troops abroad.
Of course, of course. So, Mr. Hamzah, can you tell us about future prospects of relations between Pakistan and New Zealand, specifically when we talk about people-to-people contacts between both the countries?
Well, I think we have extensive sporting ties. Obviously, the sport of cricket, Pakistan has been touring New Zealand. We played them in the World Cup as well. So, and New Zealand has great respect for the Pakistan cricket
True.
team as well. But beyond sporting ties, I think there needs to be greater cultural exchanges. And we talk about maybe, exporting indigenous tribes abroad. Now, the New Zealand have the Maori, Pakistan have the Kalash. So maybe, something of that sort where we can actually have exchanges between tribes. And at the same time, I think it's very, very important that bilateral visits take place. New Zealand and Pakistan have been collaborating multilaterally, but the frequency of the bilateral visits hasn't been, it hasn't really been there. It's almost been non-existent. I think the last time that they actually met was in the mid-2000s. So this is something that really needs to be boosted to a large extent to try and make sure that the relationship actually ventures into the right direction. Because without bilateral ties and without strong, you could say, cultural exchanges, the relationship would be a pleasant one, but it won't necessarily be a very productive one. And that's something that we really need to work towards.
Of course. So, Dr. Hasnain, can you tell us briefly about future prospects of Pakistan's relations with New Zealand, and what needs to be done to enhance these ties?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is a new destination after Brazil. I'm telling you, we can export a lot good to New Zealand, and of course, but we need to understand the high quality standards, high quality Six Sigma standards, and whatever they need to quality assurance. Because without quality assurance, we cannot send all these items or products is needed. For example, the leather or the agriculture or whatever the goods we need to send them, but it should be on the quality, as Dr. Shamsi said, and rightly point out the point that this is very much important. As other important thing is, I just wanted to mention one important thing, that New Zealand has never been operated or never been involved in any of the militarily exercises, but New Zealand create a mind clearance training program in Quetta. Quetta for the Afghan refugees. So it was one of the immense collaboration when the New Zealand want to clear the minds everywhere on the world. So it is very good, and the peaceful attitude of the New Zealand, we must appreciate this.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hasnain Javed, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Dr. Zia Shamsi, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamzah Rifaat, for being with us in today's program. Of course, in today's program, we talked about the multifaceted aspects of relationship between Pakistan and New Zealand. And of course, there is a lot of potential when we talk about economic ties between both the countries, and also people-to-people context to promote tourism between both the countries, and educational delegations can be exchanged and enhanced when we talk about bilateral ties between both the countries. That's all from Game Changer tonight.